Welcome to Churchyard Lore. Join me on a fascinating journey through time as we explore the hidden histories, mysterious customs, and enduring traditions of Britain's ancient churchyards. From Celtic crosses to curious burial practices, and from lively medieval festivities to solemn Victorian memorials, we'll uncover the stories etched in stone and whispered by the yew trees. Prepare to step into these sacred spaces where history, folklore, and faith intertwine. In the ever-changing landscape of Britain, country churches and their churchyards stand as bastions of preservation, largely untouched by time. These sacred spaces, often enclosed by boundaries, represent fragments of the countryside as it once was. As urban sprawl and modern farming methods reshape the land, churchyards increasingly serve as living museums, also offering sanctuary to flora and fauna that might otherwise be displaced. The persistence of these rural churchyards is remarkable. Many trace their origins to Saxon times, with wooden structures from the 6th century onwards eventually replaced by stone edifices. By 1086, when the Domesday Book was compiled, stone churches were prevalent across the land. Typically situated near village centres, these churches were encircled to designate sanctified burial grounds, protected from livestock by robust walls or stockades. Churchyards are treasure troves of historical artefacts. Celtic crosses over a millennium old can be found primarily in both Britain and Ireland. Lich gates, some dating back to medieval times, stand as reminders of funeral practices past. Occasionally, one might encounter timber belfries or flint towers adorned with battlements and intricate windows. The roots of Christianity in Britain extend back to the 4th century AD, predating the Roman departure. However, many Christian church sites have been considered holy for far longer. Early missionaries cleverly incorporated pagan rituals into Christian practices to ease conversion. Pagan deities were reimagined as Christian saints, and significant Christian holidays often aligned with older celebrations. Easter, for instance, derives its name from the goddess Eostre, while Christmas coincides with the winter solstice. Numerous churches were constructed on sites long held sacred. Bronze Age burial mounds, tumuli, and henges frequently share space with or lie near churchyards. Standing stones within church grounds further attest to their ancient origins. One such stone at Rudston, Humberside, may be as old as 3,000 years. Remnants of earlier structures and grave markers are common in churchyards. Saxon stones with legible inscriptions, along with coffin slabs and sarcophagi from the same era, have endured. Perhaps most impressive are the Celtic crosses, adorned with intricate carvings, and the majestic Northumbrian high crosses. Some predate the churches themselves, possibly marking gathering spots for itinerant preachers. Water plays a significant role in religious traditions. Pre-Christian sacred wells were often rededicated to Christian saints. These holy wells, particularly common in Western England, were believed to possess magical or medicinal properties. Vestiges of well worship persist in modern customs like wishing wells and well dressing. The prevalence of yew trees in British churchyards remains something of a mystery. Most were deliberately planted after the churches were built, with the highest concentrations found in Wales and the West Country, These evergreen, long-lived trees symbolized immortality and were thought to ward off evil influences. Some practical explanations for their presence have been suggested, such as providing wood for longbows or containing their poisonous foliage within secure boundaries. As the world around them changes, England's churchyards continue to stand as enduring sanctuaries, preserving fragments of history and nature for future generations to explore and appreciate. During medieval times, the church was far more than, just a place of worship. It served as the cornerstone of community life, fulfilling spiritual, social, educational, commercial, and even judicial functions. Often the oldest and most substantial building in a village, the church was the sole public edifice, seeing far more frequent use than its modern counterparts. The range of activities that took place within the church and its grounds was remarkably diverse by today's standards. The church porch might house the village school and was a popular spot for business negotiations. It also served as a distribution point for charity, with dole tables still visible in some churchyards today. The dole, which could be bread or money, used to be handed to the deserving poor in the churchyard. What began as charity in some places continued as custom until more recent times. The hot cross buns, handed out on Good Friday 1923 to these widows of the parish, were accompanied by half-crown coins. Churchyards were lively spaces hosting markets, fairs, and various entertainments. On feast days and holy days, the origin of our modern holidays, elaborate dramas, pageants, and processions would be held. Between the 15th and 17th centuries, church ales were sometimes organized, featuring communal drinking and dancing with ale sold in the churchyard. Churches also provided sanctuary for fugitives, offering protection from pursuers for about a month once they entered the churchyard. The church was deeply involved in the agricultural cycle, blessing ploughs, celebrating harvests, and participating in ceremonies like beating the bounds to mark parish boundaries. Beyond addressing spiritual needs, the church played a crucial role in sanctifying major life events: birth, marriage, and especially death. In an era of low life expectancy, high infant mortality, and widespread disease, death was an ever-present reality. It was viewed as a transition from worldly misery to heavenly glory, with burial practices holding great significance. Christian customs often intertwined with older beliefs, resulting in a complex tapestry of folklore, superstition, and Christian burial rites. Some churches even had small huts within their boundaries to house night watchmen, whose grim task was to prevent body-snatching attempts. Burials typically occurred in consecrated ground, usually the churchyard. Exceptions were made for those deemed unworthy of the church's blessing due to their manner of death or deeds in life. Suicides, for instance, were buried at crossroads at night, while executed murderers were often left hanging on gibbets. The north side of the church was reserved for difficult cases, like criminals and unbaptized children. This area was generally avoided, as it was believed to be in the church's shadow and thus a likely haunt for the devil. The south and east sides were preferred, though in Devon it was said the devil claimed the first corpse in a new churchyard. Funeral processions would pause at the lich gate, from Old English lich, meaning corpse, until the priest was ready. Until the 17th century, only the wealthy were buried in coffins. The poor were wrapped in shrouds, typically linen until a 1666 Act of Parliament mandated woolen shrouds to boost the wool trade. Some, like gypsies, were said to be buried in their inside-out clothes. A common belief held that the soul would spend eternity in its bodily condition at death. This led to fears of mutilation and amputation, with some people saving extracted teeth for placement in their coffins. This belief also complicated early anatomists' work, sometimes driving them to grave robbing. Grave orientation was significant, with bodies typically laid feet to the east and head to the west, facing the rising sun. Some were buried upside down, believing the world would turn over on Judgment Day, or to confuse restless spirits. In Lincolnshire, feet were tied together to prevent the dead from returning. Flowers and plants were often placed inside coffins and on graves. Rosemary sprigs wrapped in white paper symbolized remembrance, while yew and box branches were added for older individuals. Unmarried girls were honored with fresh or paper flower wreaths, known as maidens' garlands, which were displayed in the church or on tombstones until they deteriorated. Tombstones for commoners were a relatively late development. Until the late 17th century, most graves were marked by earth mounds and wooden crosses. The Puritans discouraged tombstones as idolatrous, but the 18th century saw renewed interest in elaborate grave markers. Permanent markers for ordinary people became common in the 18th century, with beautifully carved chest tombs and headstones, often featuring long, rhyming epitaphs that could be moving, humorous, or bizarre. The art of tombstone sculpture declined in the 19th and 20th centuries, leading to often grotesque and portentous monuments in imported marble, machine-hewn, and mechanically inscribed. This shift reflected the transformation of the churchyard from a place of community gathering and celebration to the somber, sometimes macabre Victorian vision, a stark contrast to the lively ales and revelries of medieval times. As we conclude our journey through Britain's churchyards, we're reminded that these sacred spaces are far more than mere resting places for the departed. They are living chronicles of our shared history, preserving centuries of beliefs, customs, and community life within their ancient walls and beneath their weathered stones. From the whispers of pagan rituals to the echoes of medieval revelry, from somber Victorian memorials to enduring traditions like the Painswick clipping ceremony, churchyards continue to connect us with our past while serving our present communities. As guardians of both natural and cultural heritage, these timeless sanctuaries invite us to pause, reflect, and appreciate the rich tapestry of human experience they represent. So the next time you pass a country churchyard, take a moment to step inside. You never know what forgotten stories you might uncover among the lichen-covered tombstones and ancient yew trees. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of churchyard lore. Until next time, may your curiosity never cease, and your appreciation for these remarkable places continue to grow. If you enjoyed this insight into the lore of the English churchyard, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you won't miss any of my future videos delving into our customs and traditions. I love reading your comments, so let me know what other topics you'd like me to cover. Until next time, thanks for watching and farewell.